Yo, what's good, bro? I'm Myron, and in this video I'm going to share exactly what I've learned over the last 2 years by not even having a sip of alcohol. This video isn't me trying to brag or anything, but as it's coming from a kid who literally used to get blackout drunk 3 or 4 times a week, it's not too bad, is it? So yeah, I guess I kind of am bragging. All jokes aside, I'm absolutely not trying to force you into having the same boring life as me or anything like that. I just purely want to share what I've learned from this and how it's benefited me, as I think it's quite a unique way of living, especially in this modern world. I'll even be completely honest with you and share some of the negative things that have come from not drinking alcohol. So imagine this, right? You've woken up in the morning and you've got cuts all over your face, you've got your clothes that you were wearing from the night before all over the floor with rips in them and blood all over them, and your favourite clothes that you've loved wearing for God knows how many years, and they're ripped to shit, and you can hardly remember a single reason as to why and how you've got yourself in this position. Well, a few years ago, this was no joke, the sort of thing that I was experiencing on a regular basis when I was going out and drinking alcohol. But there's this one particular night that just stands out to me, and I'm not gonna lie, it used to give me nightmares years after the event happened. Nightmares to the point where I'd wake up in the middle of the night literally, grasping for air. Like, you know how they do it in movies when it's like they sit up from their bed, and that was literally the sort of shit that I was doing because of what happened on this particular night out. So I went to university in Bournemouth, which is about 4 hours away from where I live at the moment, and it was during my first year. And in England we have this thing called Freshers Week. I'm pretty sure they have it in other countries as well, but I don't know what they call it in other countries. Here we call it Freshers Week, and essentially Freshers Week is where all the new students that have come to university all get together, they all meet up, and they have all these different parties and events organised so that you can, they call it break the ice, and essentially meet the people that you're going to be, going to university with. You meet your flatmates, you meet your course mates, and all of that stuff. So this event that I went to was one of the biggest events in Bournemouth for Freshers Week, and essentially it's a big place, big club. And they'd have like hundreds and hundreds, possibly even thousands of people could fit in this venue. And before we go to this place, we have pre-drinks. So you drink at your flat before you go out to the club because it saves money, and well, that's pretty much the only thing I can think of. It saves a lot of money. Anyway, we decided as a flat to essentially buy this big 8-litre container, right? And there was a little tap that came off this container. So imagine like a great big fish bowl, and there was a tap that came off of it. We saw this in a shop, it was only cheap, and instantly we were like, right, straight away we're like, we've got to buy that. So we bought this thing, right? We've taken it back to our flat, and we've filled it with, I think it was like a whole bottle of vodka, like a 1-litre bottle, and maybe, I want to say like a bottle of tequila as well. And then we've put in cartons of juice as well. So we've now got this great big 7-litre jug full of alcohol. And this particular night there was about 8 of us in the flat that had pre-drinks, and we had 8 litres of alcohol basically for everyone to have. And after I've had a couple of drinks, I'm thinking, Christ, this is so good, let me drink some more. So I've started drinking more and more and more, not really feeling too bad. And then we might have left our flat at about 11 o'clock to go to this club, and I was obviously drunk, but it hadn't actually hit me yet. It wasn't until we'd arrived at the club, where we were sort of queuing up outside the club, where things started to go a little bit crazy. And this is where my memory of the night starts to go down. All I know is, and this is based on what my friends have told me, so we're all queuing up for this big club. We're talking to some people from our courses, and there's girls here, boys there, whatever. We're meeting everyone, we're socialising with everyone, and all of a sudden I've gone really quiet, and I don't remember this, right? So I've gone really quiet, just sort of stopped talking to everyone, and then all of a sudden I've just bombed it, just full on sprinted down the road for no reason. I've ran away from the queue, we're all in this queue, and I've sprinted away from the queue, just to bombed it as fast as I could. And if I laugh at all on this story, I guess it is kind of funny looking back, but at the same time, when you really think about it, it's pretty So I've sprinted down this road. Everyone's looking at me apparently thinking, what the hell is this kid doing? Like, you know, imagine fully sprinting down the road at like 11 o'clock at night away from the party. And anyway, I've basically tripped and I've fallen over, gone flat on my face and grazed all of my face. It like swelled up. Yeah, that was basically the end of that night for me. I didn't go into the club. I ended up somehow making it back to my house, and I don't know how I actually got there, because remember, this was in a different city. The university I was in was a different city to where I grew up, so I had no idea where the hell I was, and it was actually a good few miles away from where our flat were. So I have absolutely no recollection of how I got home that night. But like I said, I woke up the following morning, I had a great big graze on my face, my clothes were all ripped, there were brambles like intertwined in my shirt and in my jeans. And obviously, you know, we're young guys, 19, 20, and the next morning we're all laughing about it and all this stuff. And I was laughing, of course, I'm going to go along with it, but inside something didn't quite feel right, because I couldn't remember anything that happened that night before. I couldn't remember how I got home. Anyway, I continued going out and partying and having a good time or whatever, but for the subsequent years after that night out, I would every so often wake up with a nightmare of me hitting my face on the floor, and that would be the moment where I'd, you know, sit up and go because I'd kind of reenact that moment. And it was almost like in these dreams I was remembering how I got home and stuff like that. The short story is, from that, I never got the answer. I still don't know to this day what happened on that night, but it's quite scary to think anything could have happened to me. I was so vulnerable in a new city. You know, I could have got beaten up, could have got mugged, anything, literally anything could have happened to me. As a society, you know, we just laugh about these sort of things, and I laughed about it, but when you really think about it, it's pretty serious. There are stories like this where people do die. You know, it's not a joke. Really, it's not a joke. And this is where I think alcohol can be really dangerous, because obviously what had happened to me that night was I'd drunk so much alcohol, but it took a little while for it to be absorbed by my body. And once it had been absorbed, that's when I started to get more drunk as the minutes sort of went on. Anyway, so after that story, I'd say that the more times that I drank, the more and more weird I started to feel about it, because stuff like this was happening more frequently, maybe not on the same scale, but slightly different, or maybe it was happening to somebody else. And I just started to feel like I couldn't understand how alcohol was so socially accepted, and why situations like that are just laughed at and pushed aside as though they're nothing. And, you know, it's normal for that to happen, you know, that's what kids do, whatever. But it just felt weird to me, and it felt weird to me that, you know, we joke about even small things like having a hangover, and I've just called it a small thing, like, you know, a hangover, it's not a big deal, it's normal. But realistically, when you're having a hangover, your body, that is your body telling you that what you put into your system is so toxic that it gives you a headache, makes you feel sick, makes you feel dizzy. You know, you can't walk, you're just so exhausted and tired the next day, you feel sick. Why do we laugh about that? It's just bizarre to me. Your body is clearly telling you, bro, you need to cut this out of your life. Like, at least don't drink as much as you have been. And the more and more I kept drinking, the more and more I felt like I was drinking to really mask how I was feeling. You know, I'd use it to be more confident, because, you know, maybe without it I couldn't speak to those girls, but with a couple of drinks, no, it's fine, I'd go and talk to them. So maybe I was relying on it for things like that as well. It became a bit of a cop-out, you know, and I would drink to make me feel good about not accomplishing things in my uni degree and maybe failing an exam, but it's alright, I'll have a couple of drinks, that'll make me feel better, you know, stuff like that. And I was always doing this over and over again. But after a number of years, I decided, you know what, I can't keep doing this to myself. I keep having these nightmares, I keep feeling guilty for drinking, I keep feeling anxious, something about it just doesn't sit with me. So I decided 2 years ago, I'm going to cut it out of my life. I didn't know I was going to not drink for 2 years. At that time I thought, you know what, I'll just stop for a little bit and see how I feel. But it's been 2 years, and honestly, it's been genuinely probably the best 2 years of my life in terms of what I've accomplished. So let me tell you exactly what I've learned since stopping. So first of all, believe it or not, I think there are positives and negatives to not drinking alcohol. It's not what all of the self-improvement gurus say, I do believe there are some negatives to not drinking, and I'll get into them in a moment. I just don't want to sit here and tell you that it's a perfect world when you don't drink, because that's not the case. Yes, it's great and you do get an unreal amount of fulfillment from it, but there are some definite drawbacks. I think a common misconception is that if you don't drink, you'll be super disciplined and that everything in life will just fall into place for you, and that's just not the case, you know. While it does help a lot, it's just not the do-all and end-all. There are people out there in this world who drink probably more than twice a week, and they are more successful than I am. They are probably fitter than I am. They might look better than I do. So it's not the do-all and end-all, but it does help. And I would say it's a rarity for that to happen. So here are the negatives of not drinking alcohol. And by the way, I'd say most of these negatives, or actually all of the negatives here, only exist, I would say, if you have a background from drinking and you're going to decide to stop, or you're thinking about stopping. I think if you have never drunk in your entire life, perhaps these negatives don't exist to you because you don't know anything different, if you get what I'm saying. So the first thing is that it's quite lonely. You find that a lot of the friends that you have or had are only your friends because you shared that particular activity of drinking with, and that actually you don't have much else in common. The only common ground you have is getting drunk. So you do find that, yes, it's quite lonely because there aren't a lot of other people around you, perhaps, that don't drink alcohol. As well as that, I'd say meeting new people becomes harder. You know, it's easy for people to say, well, no, that's not true. You don't have to meet people at pubs. You can meet them at the shopping mall. You can meet them at bowling. I don't bloody know. Like, you can meet them in all these places. And yes, that is true. But a lot of socialising does come from being at pubs and drinking. So it doesn't mean that it's not harder, because it definitely is. Having said that, you know, if I refer back to the above point, just because you're out and drinking with these people, it doesn't necessarily mean they're your real friends, does it? Because they're only sharing that drinking event with you. And the third point is that health can very easily become obsessive. When you stop drinking, you might start thinking, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, and all these other good habits, right? And then if there's a particular day or a particular moment where you don't do a good habit, maybe you slip up and you have a sip of alcohol, or maybe you have a bit of ice cream because you've decided that you're not going to have any bad foods as well. That's a negative in my eyes, because that's when you're becoming obsessive, and that actually makes it counterproductive, doesn't it? Because you're then stressing and you're creating anxiety over not doing the good thing. And actually, I feel like the self-improvement niche does actually offer a lot of pressure in that kind of thing. You know, you have to be doing this, you have to be doing this, and if you're not doing that, you're a bad person, you should be feeling guilty and all this stuff. So I think what we need really, more than anything, is balance. And if you do decide to indulge in this or indulge in that or whatever, you have to be fully present with it. That's not an excuse or a cop-out to say you should just be present and get smashed. I'm just saying that it's not good to obsess about anything, and you can obsess about doing good habits all the time. So that's the negatives of not drinking. Let's talk about the positives. So a lot more, as you can see. Firstly, it makes you introspective, right? So it makes you go really deep on yourself, and you can find out what works in your life and what you enjoy and what you want to get out of your life and what your mission is, right? It teaches you exactly who you are. It also makes you feel more alert. You wake up in the morning with a sharp mind, straight away, like, bam, let's get on with the day. You don't want to lie around. It makes you, really motivates you and pushes you to do more and be more, because you feel energized. Your productivity levels don't just plummet down. Another one, you don't destroy your internal organs. Of course, I mean, it goes without saying, you know. When we drink alcohol, our body obviously has to process it and get it through and out of our system. And the way that it does that is through our liver, which has to work really hard to process the substance and get it out of your body, and that causes stress on the liver, which can actually cause it to fail. Also, it costs an absolute fortune. I mean, seriously, when I was drinking alcohol, I was spending, Christ, I don't even want to think, probably when I was at uni, £100 a week at least. That'd be minimum, you know. Now I could spend £50 on healthy food for an entire week or 2 weeks. That's the sort of levels we're talking at here. It's so expensive, it's actually ridiculous. And the other two things are, it's easier to control your weight and your skin. So you might not get acne, you don't get dry skin or flaky skin, you don't put on unnecessary fat, you know, in all these like areas on your gut or whatever. I mean, it goes without saying, you already know this stuff, but sometimes it's good to be retold it. And of course, the other benefit is that you don't get hangovers. Seriously, hangovers are the worst in my opinion. They are it's not even worth drinking. The high of alcohol is on such a small scale as to how it makes you feel the next day. Is actually ridiculous. Next, the main issue that I think that alcohol brings is that people use it as a source of comfort. You know, they'll be drinking every week. They'll have a hard week at work and they'll say, you know what, I'm going to have a nice pint of beer today because I deserve it. I've worked really hard. And that pint might turn into 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, God, or more, who knows. And they might do this 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week. I know people that do it every night. And I think that's when it becomes a problem. Either that or they'll spend the entire week, looking forward to Friday night. Literally, they live for Friday night and they look forward, and that's their motivation, is to get hammered on Friday night. And then that cycle just repeats itself over and over again. You work hard, you get smashed, you spend all your money that you worked hard to get, and then you repeat it again the next week. That's how people end up living paycheck to paycheck. I think another problem with alcohol is that when I tell people that I haven't drunk for 2 years, they are literally gobsmacked. They can't believe it. We live in a world where you are seen as a weirdo, right, or an outcast for not drinking. And that to me is strange. It's as though the whole world can't live without this substance. Everyone's semi-addicted to it. And I think that's actually another reason why I wanted to stop drinking so badly, because I quite like not fitting in with the crowd. For most of the time, if you're going the same way as other people, you're going the wrong way. Next slide, and last slide. So, is it acceptable to drink on special occasions? Is it? What is a special occasion? Maybe to some people every Friday is a special occasion. Maybe some people it's on Christmas Day. So it's different for everyone, right? And that's why it becomes hard to actually give a proper answer to that. But in my opinion, the perfect way to live is to be disciplined 99% of the time. So with that being said, I actually think that there is something to be said about drinking once a year or something like that. Seriously, hear me out here. This is different to what other people in this niche will talk about, and bear in mind I don't drink at all, right? So the fact that I'm saying this is kind of unexpected probably, but I think if you're at a festival, or maybe you're on holiday with family and you're with friends and you're doing something unique, I think maybe there is something to be said about having a couple of drinks there and then, because to me that sounds like a balanced lifestyle, and to me that is being disciplined 99% of the time. I think drinking should be seen as something that's light-hearted and fun, not as an escaping mechanism that people do when they work all week and can't wait to get smashed because they want to release all of their stress. That's when drinking is wrong, and anything instantly gratifying is wrong. So playing video games is the same thing. When you want to release that stress, you go and play video games because it gives you a quick burst of pleasure. That's when drinking shouldn't be done. That's when video games shouldn't be done. But like I said, there is something to be said about drinking every now and then and staying disciplined 99% of the time. Because remember, this is life at the end of the day. We want to have some fun. That doesn't mean that I'm going to drink yet. I don't know when I am, but I haven't really had a reason to, and I'm still trying to work out if there's ever a good enough reason for me to drink at the moment. So at the moment, we're staying away from it. It's giving me good results from not drinking. But the problem in what I've just said is that people take it too far, and those special occasions will very quickly turn into going back to drinking every week again. And I think if you want to be that person that gives themselves an allowance to drink once a year, then you need to be able to prove it to yourself that you don't actually need it to escape from your reality. And most people can't do that. That's the truth. Most people can't do that. So yeah, personally, I think until you can prove to yourself that you don't need it and don't rely on it, alcohol is something you shouldn't be going anywhere near. So yeah, that's my take. Be disciplined 99% of the time. Believe you can, and you're more than halfway there.